You are listening to Salty Believer Unscripted, a conversation on Christian ministry and the Christian life.
This is Salty Believer Unscripted. I'm Josiah Walker.
And I am Brian Catherman.
And on today's episode, we're talking about dangerous discipleship. On last week's episode, or the last time we met, Brian shared that he had undergone a social media experiment where he deleted all his friends on Facebook and is only looking at it for movie times at the Sun Theater. We talked about how social media changes you, how it affects you, and how it kind of disciples us dangerously. And so on this episode, we're going to probably talk about this through multiple episodes, but on today's episode, I thought we'd talk about just social media as a whole and how that really affects our daily lives. Poorly, usually, though it could in a positive way. So,
hey, what was your first engagement into social media? Did you do MySpace?
I think I had a MySpace. I don't know if you can call this social media, but I remember coming home after school, turning on AOL on the family computer that was in my parents' bedroom and looking to the chat room to connect with all my friends from school. That's where we would talk.
That kind of was a group room, things going on, but it was kind of direct peer-to-peer chat room. Yeah. Did it? I don't know. But you had a MySpace too?
I had a MySpace too. Yeah. Had my top 5 friends on there.
I think you called some of this like the refrigerator for adults. Like, this is where I put my pictures. Hey, everybody, look at me. Look how amazing I am. Look at this
stuff.
What
Facebook feels like sometimes, or even Instagram, right? We're just posting the best parts of our life. You know, you post a beautiful part of your kitchen. Meanwhile, everything behind the camera is in disarray. It's a mess because that's where you've thrown everything. Trying to make us look Pinteresty. Trying to make it look like we have it all together, right?
Right.
Putting our best self out there. So, but that's not always edifying to doom scroll. I mean, we call it doom scroll when we're scrolling on social media, on X
scroll
or Instagram.
Of death.
Yeah.
Because there's no bottom. You just go and go and go and go. We need to deal with something though, because you know my concerns about all of this with Salty Believer and Salty Believer Unscripted. How are we not being a hypocrite right now? Oh, we're going to talk about the ills of social media. We're going to talk about the ills of these apps on the internet. Listen to our podcast, which we promote on social media.
Oh, yeah, just don't post this on our Facebook page. No, that's a good point. Like, I definitely don't want to come across hypocritical. But I think people do go. We live in a digital age. People listen to podcasts and watch YouTube videos, and this is how we get our information. We get our information from our phones.
Which is fair. Is that how you reconcile this? I'll tell you how I do. But how do you reconcile what we're doing?
I feel like what we're doing is for the greater good.
Okay.
It's seeking to be positive and uplifting and encouraging. So
that's fair.
How do you rectify what we're doing here?
Joe, I've wrestled with this podcast for a long time, because we had a season where we had a ridiculous amount of downloads, and we had 3 different publishers sending us books, and we had seminary presidents and authors and on the podcast, and it was we were getting requests to put people on the podcast to interview them.
Yeah,
and it was starting to really mess with my head bad, because number one, it seems like a lot of pastors, when they start getting a big following and they're speaking on the conference circuits, are far more susceptible to have huge sin stumbles and ruin their ministry.
Yeah.
So that always is on my mind. Like, I don't want whatever puffs up. I don't want that. Number 2, which is also why we haven't upgraded any of our gear, and this thing is still pretty not puff up-ish. Number 2, the other big issue for me is at this point in this podcast, and kind of it's been this way for years, I only have one group of people in mind. So when it was you and me both at Redeeming Life Church, I was talking to people at Redeeming Life Church. It's not talking to the world. Some of our podcasts, we were like, we're talking to pastors. I just didn't like any of that.
Yeah.
Right now, before we even started this thing, I just put a bunch of people at Trinity Church in Holdridge, Nebraska in my mind. I'm going to stand before the Lord and give an account for those people, what I say to them, how they're discipled, how they're shepherded. If you're not one of those people, I guess I appreciate you listening. That's great, but I really hope you're plugged into a local church. I hope you're listening to your pastor. I hope you're in a discipleship relationship with people, because you're eavesdropping into at least what's in my head. Now, people would say, well, why don't you just talk to them? Well, I do. I preach. We do discipleship, whatever. But that's how I do this. I'm giving a way for that group of people to listen, and I am not trying to speak to the whole world, and I don't even have a counter on this thing that I can see easily. I have to jump through a bunch of gymnastics. So yes, I feel like we're a hypocrite right now, talking about the ills of things. Someone's listening to this on their phone, and we're talking about the problems of. So there is good and there is bad. There's things.
Right.
There's ways you can use your phone well. But if you notice, there's not a whole lot on our social media. I think we deleted the Instagram thing with this. We're not on Twitter with this anymore. I
Yeah.
think we're on Facebook. Salty Believer is. I think that's the case. Whatever, right? And
No,
I'm
I
not
mean,
pushing to make it a thing.
obviously, our primary audience, we don't really talk about that much publicly, but is your church and your congregation there at Trinity, my church and my congregation here at Redeeming Life. And if you're not part of those two congregations, but you find this edifying and uplifting, praise God. I'm glad it's helpful for you. But I think our goal would be that this would be secondary to what you're receiving from your pastor and your church and the small groups that you're a part of there in your community.
Yeah, so for all 4 of our listeners, thank you for listening. And if you're at one of the churches where we're at, come see us.
Don't forget my mom, number 5.
No, I think we have more than that, but I don't know.
Well,
It's not an issue.
So
Okay,
that's why
so
we use social media.
Trying
because-
not to be hypocritical is my point.
Correct.
Because what's the real issue? Social media, being able to connect with the world via internet.
Right.
That's what we're getting at, right?
I mean, you could go down to the town square and just talk really loud through a megaphone, but I think you might reach your audience better this way, especially because a lot of them are farmers and are kind of spread apart.
Oh, true story. True story. Hey,
So
so
that's why we
okay,
use social media.
here's the question. I wonder how many of our handful of listeners, the algorithm feeds them this podcast and their podcast stuff. Let's talk about the algorithm of social media. That's the big word for Terminator machine, Skynet, whatever. But like, there's a thing that is trying, in an effort to be helpful, trying to feed you the material that you will most likely want to see and want to click on. And as soon as you go down that little rabbit hole, it continues to do so. So how does this feed the scroll of the doom scroll of death? How does this shape the way we think? How does this make us the way we are?
Yeah.
What do you see on your, what do you see on your social media? I'd have to go to the past because I deleted most of my social media. But what do you see?
So this is fascinating to me because I remember there was a time where I didn't think the algorithm existed. I thought it was just something that people talked about. I didn't know that this was really a thing that affects our lives. But there was a season of life where I worked as a mattress salesman. I sold mattresses for a living. And I remember somebody commenting, man, our ads are everywhere. They're all over the internet. I see them all the time. And our boss said, yeah, because you're constantly Googling mattresses, competitors that are selling mattresses, looking at prices at the guy down the street. That's why you're looking at mattresses all the time. And so I am always questioning when I look at an issue on my phone, is this a big issue or am I just seeing it as a big issue because I searched for this thing? I remember a couple of weeks ago, there was a big dust up at a baseball game. Somebody caught a foul ball and thought about it. And my Facebook feed was just filled with all that stuff. And I thought, well, maybe that was a big deal. But I've also been kind of looking at motorcycles lately. And it was funny how I clicked on one motorcycle video on Instagram. And all of a sudden, my whole For You page is just motorcycles.
It changed.
So there is an algorithm that feeds us what it thinks we want to eat based on the things we're looking at, clicking on, reading about, and so forth. So
no two people are even seeing the same things.
Correct.
But we forget that what I'm seeing is not what everybody else is seeing.
And that's the key
I
distinction.
realize that, I think we're all talking on the same level. Now, what's weird is sometimes we are all seeing the same thing. Because I've seen a video that pops up and then everybody is talking about it in the real world. So somehow, just like back in the early 90s, well, every kid knew to blow in the original NES video game systems. How did we all know about that? I don't know. How did we all know stories about Marilyn Manson? I have no idea. But that still happens somehow, but now it happens on the internet too. But then we also have this machine that's actually injecting steroids into that and just feeding us all this stuff that grabs our attention. It's like the biggest tempting machine ever. And if it's feeding you stuff that's a temptation to sin, you're doomed because this thing's got your number.
Yeah, because if you look at anything that's even remotely risque, it's going to start giving you stuff that's even worse and worse and worse. But also I think that's why there's such a division, and because we'll look at issues and we think everyone thinks about this person or this issue the way that I do.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that with some of the Charlie Kirk stuff that we mentioned last week, where I think there's a group of people that think it's everyone is like them and hates Charlie Kirk and hates his mission and hates what he stands for. And then there's a group of people that thinks, well, everyone loves him and cares about what he's saying and agrees with him.
And
And it
then
just
nobody thinks
creates
there's a middle
division.
ground.
There's no middle ground, right? It's
Nobody
just
thinks there's a group
polarizing.
in the middle that's like, well, I didn't know much about him, and now I'm hearing some about him, and
Yeah.
because we just get that. There was a movie that came out in 2020 called The Social Dilemma. The scary thing about that documentary, and they interview like people who are, I think the guy who invented the like button on Facebook, and he regrets it now because of what it's doing to our brains. They talk about all the algorithm. It's a really interesting show. What's really scary about it, I watched it with my kids, I think last year, maybe a little more than a year ago. What's scary about it is in 2020, they made all these predictions of what would continue to happen along the lines of this algorithm feeding machine that's just got your number. And now it's 4 years later and they're completely right. You're like,
Sure.
well, that's so scary. But The Social Dilemma, I don't know what it's on. Netflix, Prime, something, I don't know. I
Meanwhile,
don't think it's at the Sun Holdridge Theater, which is not one of our sponsors because I don't even know if they make money. The community supports them. So we support the Sun Holdridge Theater.
Of course, yeah. If you're in the Holdridge area, go there for a movie.
They're not showing The
It's not just
Social
the
Dilemma.
algorithm, right? It's also just your phone and the things that you're talking about and the people that you're seated with. You know, sometimes I get stuff based on I think my wife's looking at it.
Proximity. Oh, man.
You and I one day were on the phone talking about corn sweat.
Oh, this
I've
was the
never heard of
craziest
corn
thing,
sweat
yes.
before. I'm a city boy in Utah, and as soon as I hang up the phone with you, after you tell me what corn sweat was, I opened up social media because that's what we do. We just click on our phones and open it, and immediately there was a little graphic talking about corn sweat.
Which should terrify us.
It should,
But you know why it doesn't? We're
because
so
we
addicted
find it
to our
helpful.
phones.
Yeah.
We are so addicted to, dare I say, our idols even, that we don't want to kill them. That we don't, oh, this is so convenient. I like it. It's just like coffee. Coffee is a socially acceptable addiction for people. And so instead of like going, maybe I should drink less of it, we encourage everyone to drink more of it and it's socially acceptable. Our phones, I think, are the same problem. They're very socially acceptable.
How come iced coffee feels like you're treating yourself and it's a refreshing thing, but drinking hot coffee makes you think you have responsibilities and have to get things done?
You saw that on a meme, but that's really good, didn't you? You know what, though? Because I put sugar in my iced coffee, but I just drink my regular coffee black, and it makes me spicy. I think, though, the issue with the phone is it's just socially acceptable, and we like it too much to actually think critically about it.
Do we like it, or are we just enslaved to it?
I think I'm enslaved to my phone. I told you in the previous episode how I took all the things off my phone. Yeah. And now it's the weirdest thing when I keep pulling my phone out of my pocket. If I had switched to a flip phone, for 3 weeks, I'd probably be pulling a flip phone out of my pocket to look at all the smart devices. That's how ridiculous it is.
I think the phone companies could make millions of dollars if they bring back a retro phone. Because as those of us who are realizing our phones are changing us and we're tired of feeling miserable all the time, I think there's going to be a draw and a resurgence to go back to just something hanging on the wall or something.
I don't know if we could. I can't. It's like you can't buy a pizza if you can't do the thing on the app. I went to the football game and I had to download 2 different apps. I had to have the app. Somebody gave me tickets. I had to have the app where the tickets were transferred. Then I had to have some wallet thing, which I don't use. I sound like a super old man right now. But I had to have a Google Wallet or whatever to put the tickets in, to open that thing. And then if you walked in, like they won't even make you paper tickets. How would I have gone to a football game if I only had a flip phone? I couldn't.
I understand what you're saying, and I get that. But life has a way of finding a way. I'm a little embarrassed to say this, but during our last recording, I got a phone call from the pizza place down the street saying I hadn't been there in 90 days and they'd love to give me a free pizza.
They don't want you to lose weight. That's the problem.
It's really bad when you order so much pizza that your pizza place checks on you because they're worried that you've died. So
we're talking about discipleship by our phones. That's a relationship from an algorithm that knows about your pizza.
Right. So I'm on some database where they're like, hey, this guy hasn't been here in a while because he's been ordering online. Give him a call and get him to come in.
Here's my question, Joe. And I mean this absolutely seriously. Do they care about you or do they want your money?
No, they want my money.
So a
Guaranteed,
machine
right?
is taking advantage of you. The algorithm is taking advantage of you. But do you want to get the pizza?
I do want the pizza. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. In today's world, I don't even know if it was a real person that called me or if it was an AI voice recording.
Right.
That message.
Right.
That should disturb us too.
But, okay, so what we're talking about is dangerous discipleship. How is this conforming you to something? I would argue the world. We talked about Romans 12, verse 2. How is that changing you, and what's it doing compared to how biblical discipleship and not being transformed, not being conformed to this world should change you? Let's talk about that.
Well, once again, to quote Paul in Romans, I think it's giving us over to debased minds and just giving us over to our sinful nature and causing us to feel miserable, to feel depressed, to be, unmotivated to do anything, to hate our brothers and sisters, to hate other people, to hate those who are different than us.
How does
Just
this make you unmotivated and depressed and hate others? I feel all those things on social media. How does it do that? Let's think critically about what's actually happening when we use social media.
Well, so if I'm looking at news stuff, then I'm getting all frustrated and upset about all the things going on in the world. Because once again, if we went back to 1980, you only heard about stuff around the world once at night, right?
Yeah.
Right before the TV turned off. Now I'm hearing stories about things that don't even affect me in other states and other cities, riots that are taking place that I here in Utah might not hear about for weeks later, if at all.
And it's a bottomless pit. When you
Right.
watch the news at 6 or the news at 10, or you read the paper, there was a limit to how much could be on the system.
Yeah.
So they picked the best. They shortened things up. It was different.
Now we have a
At
24-hour
6:30 it
news
was
cycle.
over. Yeah, exactly.
And you're always looking for stories. So that's
No,
that.
no. I think we have like a 3-hour news cycle. It's not even like you wait till the next day. It's just who can
But
get
they're
to the
always
next
looking for
thing.
stuff.
Always, yeah.
But then also, let's say that we're not looking at that stuff. Let's say that we're looking at perfect houses or cabins or kitchens or things that we don't have. Then we get miserable because we're like, well, my kitchen doesn't look cute like that, or I don't have a house like
So
this.
it's envy.
My kids' toys aren't organized like this. So then you feel like you're not meeting expectations
Which
of what
is
other people
sinful. That's envy and jealousy, and that's against.
Yeah.
So you got worry and fear coming from all the news stuff. You've got envy coming from somebody's great kitchen or their awesome pickup truck or their cool new motorcycle.
Or you're being prideful and you're pointing how everything is good in your life and you're trying to one up everyone else and boost yourself up and make yourself look more prideful than you.
Hey, everybody, look at me.
Look what I could do.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so that and how does this make us hate people?
I think just the stuff it tells you, it's, look at this person. Look how they think this. Are they stupid? Are they an idiot? How could they believe that? And you're seeing people, because we're just speaking our mind, right? We're just posting things. We're not even thinking about what we say before we say it. We just hit record and we just start saying whatever.
And it feels like there's no natural consequences about the people you're talking about or the things you're doing.
Because you're just talking to a screen. So you don't realize you're talking about actual people or, what they believe. I think the Charlie Kirk thing, once again, where you had polarized things where people were just cheering and excited that he was passed away or that he was dead, that you would never see. You'd never see that at a funeral. No one goes to a funeral and celebrates that person's dead. If they didn't like that person, they don't go to the funeral.
So this is conforming us in a way that's causing us to act and think badly.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying. Like about other people, sinfully problematic. What can social media do that helps us to think well? How can our phones, we're talking about social media is one thing, our phones are another. How can this be used for good?
When I think about our phones,
kingdom discipleship, for dangerous kingdom warriors. Okay, it's dangerous to us, or it's dangerous, like we could be dangerous as weapons in the hand of God who's assaulting the devil. How can it be good?
right. I think about our phones as like I would a tool in a toolbox, right? The tools in our toolbox have a specific design. You shouldn't use a screwdriver to hammer something in, and you wouldn't use a hammer to loosen something up. So our podcast right here that we said, hey, should we really be talking about this? Are we making bigger of ourselves than we should? We're trying to use our podcast for good, to help people, to be an encouragement to help people, to point people to Christ. I think that's a good use of social media and technology.
Yeah, because we don't need you to buy anything from us because we don't have
I'm not selling
anything for
anything.
sale.
We don't even have sponsor ad time to fill. We just keep giving plugs for free to the Sun Theater, Chick-fil-A, whoever. So,
You bet.
but I also think of Bible apps. We live in a world where we have physical Bibles, but so often we use Bible apps on our phone. You use a Dwell Bible app on your phone, right? The audio Bible.
Listen. Yeah, so I can listen to the Bible. I can work with that. I listen to other podcasts too. Bible Talk, we talked about it on this podcast. Very
I
helpful.
can listen to other sermons from other churches.
Man alive, think about, okay, so let's go, 1980, you weren't listening to Tim Keller via, I could just pull it up and, you weren't listening, I was thinking about some of the first early sermons that I used to listen to regularly that social media, or I guess my computer back then, made that possible. You could listen to sermons without having to get a tape or a CD, and you still can. Now everything's live streamed. This thing that we've gone so far from, hey, I wish I could hear what Tim Keller's doing, to now I'm worshiping on the screen with somebody who's doing whatever. I don't know if I'd call that worship, but like there is some avenues. We're using technology right now to actually even record the podcast.
Right. Yeah, because we're not even in the same state. So without this, we wouldn't be able to do this.
How does this help me?
And
so specifically, how does it help me to know God? How, if I'm supposed to be transformed according to Romans 12:1 and 2, so that my worship is here, how does that actually help me do that? Give me some examples for you.
Yeah. So using it to fill time. So when you're in the car, you can listen to things that are edifying versus things that tear you down. Listening to a seminary lecture on systematic theology, or a sermon from a faithful preacher that you like, or just God's word in general. I mean, I remember buying the Bible on CD so I could put it in my car so I wouldn't be tempted to go to my phone, because I'd end up pulling up something I shouldn't look at.
Doing whatever,
so I think making the most of the time when you're waiting. That's what we do with our phones. We're in a doctor's office. We're pulling it off. Instead of doom scrolling Facebook, let's scroll through scripture and read the Psalm of the day.
Right. Hey, how many people do you think, if you were to take a comparison, how many people do you think, honestly, maybe our listeners, I don't know, us, you and me, do more of that with their phone compared to the stuff we described before that leaves us feeling like crap, leaves us hating people? How many? I mean, really, honestly, I'm 26 years old and I want to love Jesus, but I also have this phone, so I'm checking all the sports scores and doing all this and doing the news and doing that. What do you think the comparison is for the typical Jiffy Lube Joe's out? You work whatever.
If you went into the metrics in your phone and you pulled up how much you were in the Bible app or even YouTube looking at specific videos, I think the numbers would pale in comparison. I think we're talking about a 1-2% of use of phone time for the week compared to what you did on social media or other things.
Which would be a ton. Plus, what about, okay, so someone says, yeah, but I'm young, I'm not married, I'm lonely, and this gives me an avenue to see people and feel connected and feel like I have a tribe. So, but you just told me that makes us feel like we hate people and we're envious and there's all kinds of problems.
I think it gives you a false sense of community and a false sense of togetherness. I think there's a reason we used to love shows like Friends or Cheers, because that's where everyone came together and were physically connected. I think we're going to find, as we kind of talk about this more in some future episodes, that the togetherness or the part of something that we feel like we're in isn't really there. And it's just masking what's really going on inside.
Okay, so here's the problem. I don't know how helpful this is. We've identified the problem, but we need to keep talking about this. But the podcast is out of time because we have a time limit.
Well, it's part one.
The podcast is not bottomless. You can't doom scroll Salty Believer Unscripted. So what have we actually, what have we even covered in this random chat?
I think we've talked about how social media needs to be viewed under the lens of there's a purpose behind it. Corporations, businesses, there's a goal in mind. And it's not to help you live your best life ever. It's to get your money. It's to get your attention, to get your time. And I mean, they're buying your attention and your time for the day, right?
Yeah, because people aren't doing this for free. Unlike this podcast that we just pony up our own dollars for the server, they're making money. This is big money, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, half of Facebook, if you look at it, is ads right now.
Yeah, that's so true.
I mean, yours is probably more because you have no friends, but it's all just...
It is. No, I took all the friends away, and now all I see is the ads.
Right.
So, okay, I'm going to say it this way, and then we'll wrap up this episode, maybe deal with this in the next one. I go back to Romans 12:1 and 2, especially 2, do not be conformed to this world. I would argue that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If you if you feel like there's a problem in the world and you're just part of you're being conformed to it, that's what this social media thing is doing. That's what this group think is doing. That's what this doom scrolling is doing, is it feels the way it feels because you're being pruned and shaped to look like the world, opposed to the other side of that. But, which is a contrast word, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, like making it new. So that by testing, you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and what is acceptable and perfect. So I would say in that verse, if we're trying to sum up what we're talking about, we have described the first clause, this is what this stuff is probably doing, conforming us to the world. We are starting to scratch at what the next part of that looks like.
Praise God. So in the meantime, while you wait for us to record the next episode, I would encourage our listeners to make some self-assessment. Take a moment and look at your life. Does your life look more like the world, being conformed by the world as you use your phone and use social media? Or are you being conformed more and more like Christ Jesus every day? Think about that, and then let's revisit this topic next time.
Thanks for listening. Salty Believer Unscripted is a production of SaltyBeliever.com. Visit the website to find more resources like the podcast you've just listened to.